Hey everybody, welcome to the channel, True Crime Stories. If you're new to the channel, please hit that like button and subscribe so you can hear more. Thanks for stopping by. Before I get started on today's story, I just wanted to thank everyone who has come on to the channel, who has subscribed and liked, shared the videos, given comments and feedback. I really appreciate it. I've had a couple of people reach out to me recently with some stories that they wanted me to talk about, and I'm going to start working on those stories. I also wanted to thank one person who commented that they like my channel because I'm real. I keep it real. I give my insights and my own thoughts on these cases. And another real thing about my channel is like right now, if you hear that little clicking sound in the background, that's my dog. She wants to be right beside of me while I'm working. So I apologize if that little clicking noise, that's her little feet on the floor. But I just wanted to say how much I appreciate everybody who takes the time, because YouTube is so multi, faceted, or whatever term you want to use. There's so many different subjects for everybody. There's something for everybody. And I just appreciate the people who come to my channel. I don't have the biggest following. I don't have the most subscribers. I'm not monetized. I'm not advertising. I just find these stories and tell them. Like I said, for the month of October, I had some different subjects and some different things that I wanted to post. I've had a little bit of a setback in my time that I can spend to edit and to get these stories up, because I've had some family stuff going on, and I just wanted to. I'm a little behind on everything, but I'm trying to catch up. But today I want to talk about a story that a subscriber sent to me a link and wanted me to talk about this. I'm going to see what I can find out about it. And this is the disappearance of Lynn Burdick, Burdick. This is from a website called Murder She Told. The disappearance of Lynn Burdick. The region known as the Berkshires sprawls across western Massachusetts. Tall pine forests and lush rolling hills blanket the region in shades of green during the summer and white in the winter. The Appalachian Trail winds through its wilderness and hits various peaks along the way. Florida, Massachusetts is in the northernmost part of the state, or it's in the northernmost part of this region. It's just 4 miles from the Vermont border. It was here that Lynn Burdick was raised by her father, Rufus. Rufus was a machine worker, and her mother, Dorothy, was a homemaker. Lynn was their fourth and final child, and she had a brother and 2 sisters. Lynn's house on Central Shaft Road always seemed to be brimming with people. Even as the Burdick children grew up and moved on with their own adult lives, the house remained a sanctuary for those who needed shelter. By the time Lynn was in her late teens, she was sharing the home with her parents, an aunt and uncle, and 2 cousins. At home, Lynn never shed the role of caretaker. She was often called upon to watch her relatives' children. She enjoyed babysitting and playing with the kids, and even kept a basket of old toys in her room for the little kids to play with. Now, when she got into high school, her mother became ill, and she had to take on more of a role of homemaker herself. Her father was working full-time to support the family, and her older siblings were already gone and moved out of the home. So Lynn became the primary caretaker for her mother. She was a quiet girl. At school, she got good grades. In the spring of her senior year at McCann Technical School, she made the high honor roll. Lynn wanted to attend college and become a cartoonist, but those dreams had been placed on the back burner until she could scrape together enough money to pay for her tuition. She got a job working night shift at the Barefoot Peddler, and she set aside a little bit of her cash that she had earned to pay for her senior class pictures, and she wanted to attend the prom, so she bought herself a prom gown. Most of Lynn's friends noticed that she was beginning to come out of her shyness. She was more outgoing during her final year of high school. And as the days grew toward the end of the year, she was making plans for her future, and she seemed to be really excited about this. Now, the long weekend was off to a dreary start. This was April 17th, 1982. It was a Saturday. In the late afternoon, Lynn was dropped off at the Barefoot Peddler by her brother Brian. He and his wife had accompanied her to a party that afternoon in town. But now it was time for her shift. She was supposed to work that night from 4 to 9 p.m. About 40 minutes later, Lynn's parents called to offer her a ride home. When no one answered the phone, they sent their son to go check on her. About 5 minutes later, Brian walked into the store and found all the lights on and only a dog inside. Looking around, he spotted Lynn's novel that she had been reading, face down next to an open bottle of soda. There was no sign of Lynn anywhere. Her purse or the school jacket that she had worn to work were not there either. The only thing that he found was this novel and an open bottle of soda. It was as though his little sister had stepped out for a moment, planning to return. Brian knew that this was very unlike Lynn. She was a very responsible girl and would never have just walked away, leaving the cash register unattended. After several minutes waiting for Lynn to return, Brian called the police. Within minutes, the part-time police chief, Charles Briggs, came to the store and inspected the scene. There was no sign of a struggle. There was about $180 had been taken from the cash register, and an undisclosed amount of backup cash that was kept under the counter remained untouched. So I would assume that whoever took this money didn't know about this cash. Now, if people wanted to say Lynn just ran off, she just took the money and went on the run, $180 wasn't going to get her very far. And I don't know how much this backup cash was there, but this tells me that it makes me believe that someone came into the store. Maybe they were the ones that was going to purchase this soda. They opened it. They said, and once she opens the cash register to give them change, they take the money, grab her. Within 1 hour, backup had showed up at the store, and they began to set up roadblocks along the main roads in town. A search crew spent the night searching in the high winds and the downpouring rain to look for Lynn. Now, around the same time that Lynn was fielding calls from her family members that evening, a crime was being committed at a nearby college. An attempted kidnapping at nearby Williams College. Now, this was a prestigious private liberal arts school 2 towns over. It was a typical Saturday night, and a young woman who was a freshman was crossing the driveway near the dormitories when a car pulled up next to her, and the wheels of the car was splitting rainwater. The driver's side window rolled down, and a man in his 30s asked her for directions. She later described him as a white man of average height. Since he was sitting down inside this car, she thought he might have been around 5'6" to 5'10". She said he had medium length brown hair that was parted to the side, and he was somewhat pudgy and had a pot belly. She said he was wearing a plaid shirt, and his belly was pushing, the shirt was tight on his belly. She also said that he was wearing a dark jacket, and she said that the inside of the car was blue with bucket seats. When she leaned in to see what he wanted and to speak to him, he attempted to pull her into the car, but she fought back. In the struggle, she managed to bite his right hand near his thumb. She said she bit him as hard as she could. The man screamed and released her and peeled off into the rain. She was terrified, and she ran as fast as she could to the dormitory and called the campus police. She recalled every detail that she could. She gave to the police. She described the car as having rectangle taillights. She recalled the exterior color was a dark green or blue. She said it was a late model car in good condition. And the police, with the help of her describing the car, developed that it might have been a Ford LTD. Williams College and the Barefoot Peddler were only around 8 miles apart. It did not take a great leap of thought to connect the attack of the young woman at the college with the disappearance of Lynn Burdick. Lynn disappeared around 8 p.m. to 8:40 p.m. The college attempted kidnapping happened at around 7:45 p.m. So this guy, maybe the bite on his hand was bleeding. Maybe he goes into this store to get some Band-Aids or antiseptic or something and sees this girl in there alone. And since his first attempt at kidnapping someone was, foiled, he grabs her. Perhaps bolstering the theory was the call placed to the police at around 8 p.m. from a phone booth on Route 2 between Williamstown and North Adams. The caller was a man who said he noticed a dark green or dark blue car with square taillights, and they passed 3 vehicles at a high rate of speed driving in the eastbound lane in the direction of Florida. Now, the timing of these encounters, the complaint of an erratic car, so he calls the cops to say, listen, there's this guy in this car, he's driving like crazy, he's passing people, and it was raining really hard, and he thought this was dangerous, and so he calls to report this to the police. Well, this all lined up with the time of the attempted kidnapping and Lynn's disappearance. On the morning after her disappearance, Sunday, April the 18th, Chief Braggs called in the state police and expanded the search for her. They had hoped that maybe she was still in the area. More than 120 people spread out on foot and in vehicles to search for her. The Florida Volunteer Fire Department brought in ATVs to get back into harder to reach areas. On the 3rd day, a car was discovered burnt in a small area in Vermont. This would be totally unrelated to Lynn's case except for some striking coincidences. The vehicle had been stolen from Braintree, Massachusetts, that was a populous suburb of Boston. Now, it was reported stolen the day that Lynn was abducted. So maybe he ditched the car that he was driving and stole this car, either with Lynn or without Lynn. Maybe, it was after he had kidnapped her and done whatever he did to her. Um, this was 3 hours away from where Lynn went missing. The location of where the vehicle was discovered was 20 miles north of Florida, Massachusetts, where Lynn went missing. But what really caught the attention of the police was that it was so similar to the description of the attempted kidnapping victim. It had a green exterior and a blue interior, which was what she had told the police. Instead of a Ford LTD, it was a 78 Pontiac Phoenix, and it did have rectangular taillights. Now, some people dismissed this as possibly being the car because this car did not have bucket seats, and this girl described to the police that the car did have bucket seats. She could have been mistaken, or maybe it wasn't the car. Before I move on into the next part of this story, I would just like to remind everybody, if you haven't already, to please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Lynn's disappearance shocked the people in her community and in the neighboring towns. Everyone was talking about this attempted kidnapping and this girl going missing. She was not the first young woman to go missing in the Berkshire County. Kim Benoit was only 18 when she disappeared from her hometown in North Adams in 1974. Her body was discovered a few days later along the banks of the Deerfield River. In a seemingly similar incident 2 years later, 17-year-old Cynthia Krizak went missing from Williamstown, Massachusetts. She was an honor student, and on October the 7th, 1976, at around 8 p.m., she was walking from her home that borders Williams College. Now, she was walking down the street from her home, and the street borders Williams College. So it was all in the little same community. It was about a block and a half from the college. She vanished without a trace. About 3 weeks later, her body was discovered in a remote area in the town of Windsor. She was at the bottom of a 30-foot embankment, face down. Law enforcement determined that she had been struck on the head and strangled to death, but according to them, there were no signs of sexual assault. The two women, Kim and Cynthia, were both abducted and later found alongside streams at the bottom of embankments. Also in 1976, a school teacher from Cape Cod named Carol Ann Todd vanished from a North Adams hotel where she had been staying. 5 months later, 2 local scouts came upon her body wrapped in a sheet in the woods north of Florida, Massachusetts. The state had decided to put in a low-security prison camp in the woods, and her body was found just outside the grounds of this camp. An inmate who was working at the hotel on the day of her disappearance eventually confessed to stabbing her to death. He pled guilty to manslaughter and was given a 20-year sentence. While Carol Ann's murder was solved, Kim and Cynthia's remain open today. Many members of Lynn's community drew comparisons with the other cases in the area. Now, there was a theory shared by a former prosecutor named Tim Burke, and he had published a book about Boston's unknown serial killer. He made a case against a man named Leonard Paradiso. Now, this man died in 2008. This Tim Burke wrote this book, and he said that he believed that this man, Paradiso, I hope I'm saying his name right, had served 3 years for assaulting a young woman and he believed he was a serial killer operating in the Boston metro area and other regions of Massachusetts for around 15 years. In July of 1982, Paradiso was arrested for the 1979 rape and murder of 20-year-old Marie Iannuzzi. Her body, he had discarded her body in the marshes, and he was convicted in 1984. Now, this Tim Burke suspected that he may also have been responsible for Kim's murder and for other murders in the area as well. They say that he was an avid deer hunter and that he knew the forests and the areas, the marshes and the forests in this area very well. During the investigation into Marie's death, police searched a house that belonged to Paradiso's girlfriend and found a photograph of him standing next to the Summit Motel and Restaurant in Lynn's hometown of Florida. Now, this guy went on tour to promote his book, and he was asked why he hadn't included Lynn in this theory, and that he replied that he was not even aware of the case during his time as the prosecutor and that he had no information about Lynn to include in the book. And it wasn't until years later that he learned of Lynn's disappearance. So years turned into decades, and Lynn's family did not stop searching for her. Leads dried up and tips became more rare. But they held on to the hope that their daughter might still be alive. And even if she wasn't, they hoped that they might actually one day find her remains so that they could give her a proper burial. In 2022, the Berkshire County District Attorney's Office and the Massachusetts State Police released a series of sketches of the suspect in the abduction attempt at Williams College. Now, they made pictures of this man showing him as age progressed. His face is lined, they show what the girl described him as looking like as an older man. They drew a picture of him that would put him at around 70 years of age. They even made one photo of him that maybe he was bald. They drew one where he was wearing a mustache and beard. And they believe that this man had ties to the state of Vermont because they still believe that this car that was found burned was probably the car that he was actually in that night. And maybe he burned it, maybe because he knew there was blood and stuff that would be found. And he probably also knew that the car was, maybe he was also getting these news reports of this car being described on TV or in the newspapers. So they put out this deck of playing cards that features unsolved homicide victims. And they distribute these cards in jails and prisons, hoping that someone in there might speak. In the 2024 deck, Lynn Burdick is the King of Diamonds. She smiles from her senior portrait beneath the words missing person. If you have any information on the disappearance of Lynn Burdick, please contact the Berkshire State Police Detective Unit at 413-499-1112. Or you can submit a tip to tips.fbi.gov. I will go back and look up these other women who were possibly victims of this same man and see what details I can gather about them. If I find any newer updates about Lynn, I will come back and do a follow-up on her. Now, while I was doing some searches on Lynn to see what I might be able to find about her, I found a Facebook page with some information about her disappearance. It's basically just gives her race as white. She was 18 at the time of her disappearance, 5'4", 115 pounds. She was known to have been wearing a McCann, M-C-C-A-N-N, Vocational Technical High School class ring with a blue stone and her initials engraved. They believe it's possible that she was also wearing a McCann Technical Vocational jacket. This would have been like a class jacket. She had brown hair and blue eyes, and she did wear eyeglasses. Now, she worked at the Barefoot Peddler Country Store, a convenience store owned by her cousin. The store was located on the corner of Route 2 and Central Shaft Road. And this was just they described the store as only being a few hundred yards from her home. Is it possible that she walked to and from her job at times? Now, I know she didn't that day because they said that her brother dropped her off. And he called to come pick her up. This is the reason he went to the store that night, was because no one answered the phone when he called to see if she wanted him to come pick her up. They described the night as being rainy and gray, and so maybe he just thought she won't want to walk home. I'll go pick her up. But is it possible that she did walk home on other nights and that maybe this man had spotted her? But personally, I believe the man came into the store that night because this other girl had bit him on the hand, and he was probably bleeding and wanted to get some kind of bandages or maybe something, and came up on this store and went inside and found Lynn. He found this opportunity. Now, her cousin says she didn't like for Lynn to work alone at night, but she was at home caring for her sick child, but that she would go by the store several times throughout the night and check on her. And she would call and check on her almost every hour or two. She worked about 5 hours each night that she worked. And she said that she would go by the store before closing time and help Lynn close up. But that night, she had stayed at home because of her child being sick. But she says that she was on the phone with Lynn at about 8:10 p.m. And she heard the sound of the overhead bell of the store front door. When someone walks into a store, they have like a little bell that rings. And she heard this, so she knew someone had come into the store, and Lynn told her cousin that she had a customer and that she would call her back, but she never did. At around 8:30 p.m., Burdick's mother tried to call the store and got no answer. She wasn't that concerned because she knew it was getting close to closing time. She thought Lynn's probably just cleaning up and closing up the store. And she called again 10 minutes later, and there was still no answer. This is when, another customer actually says they came into the store at about 8:40 and no one was in there. Now, he knew Lynn. He knew that she would be working that night, and he was familiar with the store. So with Lynn working at the store. So he called Lynn's family and said, something's going on down here. Lynn's not here. The store's unlocked and open. So this is when the family called the police. The police never believed that Lynn left on her own. They didn't see anything in her history. She didn't have a troubled history. She didn't have any kind of problems with her parents or her school. She was doing well. And they didn't see any reason to believe that she had simply taken this money and ran. But right now, that's really all I can talk about Lynn. I couldn't find anything else about her. There have been no updates. The last story that I was able to find on her was from 2022. Thanks for watching.